Good day to you. Welcome to another edition of The Front Page on Morehead State Public Radio. I'm your host, Chuck Mraz. Today our guest is Dafna Michaelson, who is in the midst of a journey. They call it the 50 and 52 journey. It's kind of a one-woman dream to help America get back on its feet. And Dafna, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're traveling the country right now. Tell us a little bit about what the 50 and 52 journey is all about.
Well, what the journey is about is an opportunity to go around the country and introduce America to Americans who are truly moving our country forward. It's a 2009 project, and I'm traveling to one state a week for the 52 weeks of 2009 to really take the opportunity to meet the problem solvers who are on the ground.
How'd you get this idea?
It's actually a funny story. My boyfriend and I were in the grocery store, and he wanted to buy a lottery ticket, and we had one of those "what would you do if you won the lottery" conversations. And I, of course, first outfitted my Porsche Cayenne hybrid, of course. And then he said, "Would you do any traveling?" And I said, "You know what, I would. I would go around the country, and I would meet with every governor, and I would ask them how they're engaging their citizens in solving community problems." Well, the next morning we didn't win the lottery, and we decided, you know what, we really did want to go around the country and meet the people who were solving community problems, and 2009 felt like a really important time to do it. We were seeing everybody was so focused on the upcoming election, and we're holding out hopes that that new president, whomever he or she might be, was going to solve all of their problems at home. And we were starting to feel as a country down. We were starting to lose control of our portfolios. We didn't know how far down it was going to go. We didn't have control over what was happening in Iraq, and we certainly had no specific control over who was going to be in the White House. And everybody was holding all their bets on who was going to be in the White House. And I felt like it was misguided, and we were being down as a country when I felt we should be up, because there were people all around us who were seeing problems and solving those problems not only for themselves but for the people around them. And I wanted to introduce them.
Well, the quote that I saw in the press release, it said, "I knew that this country needed to return to its foundation of respect." And I was hoping you might explain what that means to you and what possibly it should mean to others.
I'm glad you pulled out that quote. You know, I knew that we needed it as a country to respect ourselves, respect Americans. I was raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, actually. And when I lived there, there was a really popular news anchor who all of a sudden dropped off the radar screen for about a month. And then he came back on. And what he had done for that month was he had lived undercover as a homeless man. And he showed how all of his colleagues and friends who were high-level business executives in Cincinnati would walk right by him and not even look at him, let alone acknowledge that there was a homeless man asking for a handout on the street. Well, I was 14 years old when he did that, and it really affected the way that I looked at the people around me and the way that I was conscious about being respectful of all humans, no matter what their station in life. Well, this man went on to become mayor, and if you're real familiar with Cincinnati, you know that this man went on to become the host of the Jerry Springer Show, which then took my view of America to a whole different place. He started highlighting people who he thought was America, and I couldn't even watch the show because he was trotting out all of the worst of our society and saying this is what America is. And I felt that we needed to return to a place where we understood that that's not what the true Americans are. You know, this man who really shaped me to believe that we are a people that needs to be respectful and see all that is around us and see the good in all people, now is showing the worst of who we are. So I wanted to go back and say, let me see who the best of who we are is. And as I started meeting these people, I started hearing their own battles for respect. So a young woman who works with mentally disabled children, her peers, she's 14 years old, her peers run around the school halls saying, "Oh my God, I tripped, I'm so retarded." And she was very offended by the use of the word retarded. And she knew that these peers of hers wouldn't ever consider hanging out with mentally disabled or physically disabled children. So she started a campaign to teach them how to respect all the people around them. And we see this in every community. In the community where it's been most prevalent thus far has been the Native American community, who, as a people, are working very hard to have their history which is our history, incorporated into schools and into textbooks. They'll tell you, your history starts at 1776. What happened before? We've been here for many, 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 many thousands of years. So it's been interesting to hear how we work together and what are the ways that we're coming about to bring that respect within our community.
Well, I agree with you in the sense that when you talk about showing the worst of who we are is not very representative of who we are and maybe what we can be. But I'm sure that if you talk to Jerry Springer, he would say to you, well, the reason why I'm showing you the worst of who we are is so we can be better.
I'm sure that's definitely his perception. But if you go outside of our country, they're not looking to see how Americans are being better. This is how America is being portrayed around the world. And he's syndicated around the globe because he brings out the extreme of all of us. And yes, he has his wrap-up every day, which is something he started when he was on the NBC affiliate in Cincinnati. After he did this month-long program on the homeless, he started having this, Jerry's commentary at the end of every newscast, and we watched it like, it was the best thing on TV. It's important, I think, that we gain respect for ourselves and reach for the stars by seeing others who are doing the same. And it's not even reaching for the stars, it's helping those around us. For example, in Atlanta, Georgia, a couple had three children. Two of them, at about 16 years old, stopped developing. So they too were mentally delayed. And they realized at 22 they ran out of services. They could no longer go to school, as they called it, and all that was left for these kids was a life of bagging groceries half a day, and then the rest of their life was spent on the couch watching TV, and they had no social network. And the kids were becoming depressed. So they got up and they started a program because there were other kids like theirs, they knew it, around the community. So now they meet twice a week. It's called the Next Stop Gang, and they meet in Suwanee, Georgia. And these kids are having a social network. They're having people that they can interact with. They're having relationships. They're of that age where they can have appropriate male-female relationships. And their life is better because one woman said, my child doesn't need to sit on the couch all by herself and be alone. She started an organization for others. And I believe that we're more likely to become inspired to do by watching that than we are by watching the extreme of our society.
And unfortunately, and you know this, and I'm probably telling you something that maybe many people know too as well, is that the extreme sells, and that's why it's on television.
Absolutely. But there are those amongst us still who would prefer to have something else. And I'm not saying, don't watch it. You want to watch it, go watch it. But then you want a dose of reality. You want to see who's really changing the world. You want to become inspired about what's going on right around you in your community. In Morehead, Kentucky, there are amazing things. So go on to 50and52journey.com and be inspired for 10 minutes a day, and then you can watch it the extreme for the rest of the day. I'm all about it.
Well, I won't say that I haven't watched the Jerry Springer Show before, but each and every time I do, I feel like I need to take a shower when I'm finished, quite frankly.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was Phil Donahue first started going down this path, and I remember as a kid watching, and really I was actually clutching at my chest because I was so embarrassed. And I was embarrassed for what people were seeing and thinking is America. And I stopped watching. I stopped completely watching talk shows altogether. Every once in a while I wanted to peek at Jerry Springer because we really hoped from Cincinnati that he was going to represent us well. And, Cincinnati is very conservative. So this wasn't the thought of what we hoped Jerry Springer would become. So we tried to watch.
Well, when did you start your 50 and 52 journey?
I started traveling January 7th, 2009, because it's a 2009 project, and that was the first full week. And we will be going until the last week of December, and the last trip is to Colorado, which is my current hometown. So
how many places have you been so far? I know you were in Kentucky last week.
Yep, that was state number 27 on the journey.
So you probably learned quite a bit through 27 states. Did you learn maybe more than what you thought you would?
Absolutely. People ask me before I even began, what are the issues that you're going to be covering? And we made a decision. I put together a board of directors to help make sure that we created a 501c3 charitable organization, and we wanted to make sure that we had the greatest possible impact on the country as we did this. So we decided that we weren't going to seek out issues. We were going to put a nominate button on our website, and we were going to spread word out through various social viral networks that we were coming to a state. Please tell us what are the problems that are being solved in your community. And then we receive nominations through our website that tell us, come look at what we're doing with compost. Come look at what we're doing with local food. Come look at what we're doing to help the homeless. Come look at what we're doing as a Native community to increase our strength and our economic stability. Come look at what we're doing in Somerset, Kentucky for rural development and economic development. And much of the things that are coming through are things that I wouldn't have thought of. For example, there have been two now in separate states, one in California, one in Florida, former gang members, drug addicts, homeless individuals who have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps with help and support from family, community, the legal system, and have started organizations where they are helping, in one instance, keep kids out of gangs, pull them out of gangs, and get them engaged in expressing themselves through the arts in Miami. And then in Florida, in La Jolla, California, he is helping take adults off of the food line who California has an 80% recidivism rate, so they're very likely to go back to jail. And he is helping them clean themselves up, get themselves appropriately attired, and ready for the workforce so that they can go back out and earn an income and not add to the 80% recidivism rate in California. These are things that I wouldn't necessarily have thought to look for, but have learned so much about.
How many places did you go to in Kentucky? And I know you mentioned you found something interesting in Somerset. Were there some other places that you stopped?
Yes. I was in Somerset, I was in Lexington, I was in Morehead, and I was in Newport, and I was in Louisville. And it was really, truly tremendous. In Lexington, which was my first stop, I met the two women who are at the base of the Catholic Action Network in Lexington, Kentucky, a great group of women who had been volunteering to feed the homeless through their church, and they realized that there was a lack of services in Lexington. And they spent a year. They focused on a book that was written in 1930 by a Catholic woman in New York who basically came out and said, if all of the churches and synagogues and faith-based organizations in New York opened their doors, nobody would have to sleep on the streets, and started a whole movement on hospitality houses, which really didn't take hold the way that it should. Apparently, according to Catholic canon law, see, I'm learning all sorts of things. According to Catholic canon law, every church must have a house of hospitality where they open their doors to the homeless. And it's not the case, and it's not, many of the church leadership will tell you it's not possible. We don't have the money or the funds to leave our systems on all day, et cetera. Well, for these women, it wasn't enough. They spent a year, they told me, praying and researching what was going on in Lexington, and they started the Catholic Action Network. I can't remember the intersection in Lexington, but they said it's an intersection that's well known for prostitution and for drug activity. And they opened their doors and they served meals every day. And then they started to have small focus groups with the homeless members of their community or the people who were just coming in and eating, and said, what do you need? And we're told, we need a place to go to the bathroom where we're not going to get kicked out or told we're loitering. We need a place where we can take a shower. We need a place where we can do our laundry so that we can go to a job interview and not smell. And all of these things they began to do. So now they have a bathroom that is clean and respectful and a place where the people who are living on the street in Lexington can come. They have a hospitality house where they ask no information. She said, if you tell me your name is Dumbo, I'll say, hi, Dumbo, welcome in and sit down. And they are creating systems where the people can be treated with dignity and respect, and they are seeing success. They've been doing it for 10 years, and they're seeing people come off the streets, and they're seeing those people who were on the streets come back and serve meals in their action center. This was in Lexington. And then in Morehead, I met with a doctor at, I think your hospital there is St. Clair's, is that correct?
That's correct.
I met with a doctor from Ethiopia at St. Clair's who went around the world really for his education and settled on Kentucky and Morehead because he felt the most at home in Morehead to do his practice once he finished his medical education. Once he got settled, he started an organization called People to People. This is Dr. Mahari at St. Clair's. And this organization has taken many physicians and medical professionals from Morehead, Kentucky, and around the country to Ethiopia to help develop medical systems, because Ethiopia, he says, is well behind the world in medical services to the people of his country. So that wasn't enough for him. He's doing his full-time work at St. Clair's. He started People to People, which is another full-time position, and he started to notice, as we've all been noticing and been discussing so much this year, that there are people in the middle who get stuck without insurance in Kentucky, people who are too wealthy, if you will, to be approved for Medicaid, and too poor to be able to afford to buy themselves insurance because they have jobs that don't provide it for them. So he started a free people's clinic in Morehead. And through this clinic, he's been able to fill that gap and get doctors from St. Clair's to volunteer services and come in and treat, including dental services. And the St. Clair Hospital has also given them significantly reduced lab fees and referrals for when the care needs to be taken from the clinic to the hospital. They have diagnosed undiagnosed cancers and other things that when you have no insurance, that's what happens. They've been able to start at least making a dent in that gap in Morehead, which was very significant. And so there have been many, many fascinating things around your state.
We need to take a break right here and come back, but our guest today on the front page is Dafna Michaelson. She's involved with her 50 and 52 journey. It's about changing America one community at a time. We'll pause on front page, come back with more right after this.
Support for Morehead State Public Radio comes from the MSU West Liberty Area Innovation Center, assisting technology and innovation-based entrepreneurs to obtain startup financing, access new markets, and write business plans. The center also provides assistance in obtaining patents, regulatory compliance, venture capital, building e-commerce capacity, and working with technology businesses and innovative energy companies to grow a new economy in Appalachian, Kentucky. More information is available at 877-743-4005 or online at msurec.com.
Welcome back to the front page. Again, I'm Chuck Mraz, and our guest is Dafna Michaelson, who's involved with a personal 50 and 52 journey. It's about changing America one community at a time. And Dafna, what this reminds me of is the old phrase that change comes from the bottom up, not the top down.
I would tend to agree with you. And it's fascinating to find we say that bottom up. I think we are so used to looking to the top for change, and as I had said, that's where this is coming from. We were so focused on D.C. for the future of the country, and I believe that D.C. wasn't where it's at. It's at home. It's by the people in your very community who are taking their own time to say, you know what, I've got a problem. If I've got that problem, other people have that problem too, so let's figure out how to solve it instead of suffering. And we look at that as the bottom, and I, in my head, now see very clearly that that is the top.
You told some very interesting stories, and I just wondered as you told these stories if perhaps a book might be in the offing.
Definitely. There are a couple of outcomes that will be after the journey. The main concept that we're working on now is there is a program we're starting called the 50 and 52 Foundation. We actually just bought the URL, and we'll ultimately have a video up there soon. And the idea about this foundation is that we will be reaching out across America and saying, you know, Chuck, what's the problem you want to solve in your community? Please tell me about that problem. And then we're going to match you up with people around the country who are trying to solve similar problems. And we'll have 4 summits a year where we'll focus on one problem in multiple states, bring together experts from around the country whom we may have met throughout the journey, and help you create a network to solve that problem you want to solve in your community while others are attempting to solve it in their state as well. We'll help you build a business plan, develop a first fundraiser, and launch you back out into your community with all the tools that you need, a network, a business model, and the knowledge that you can solve the problem in your community effectively, removing that boundary between taking your great idea off of the couch and putting it into action in your community. We're also working on a book, which will be a snapshot of 2009, a moment in time in American history, which is what are the problems we are solving for ourselves as a community in 2009. And already in 27 states, we can begin to build themes about the problems we're solving as a community. But what is so incredible is within each state, as each state has its own natural characteristics and beauty, there are nuances and pieces of each of these similar problems that are so specific to your region and so creative that when we were able to pull these things together, we hope that this book will be a treasure trove for the idea generator to say, oh my goodness, look at all of these incredible people and concepts and ideas and how they came together. And then finally, we're developing an independent film, which will take a look at the journey a little bit more through the perspective of how it has affected me in terms of my upbringing and the challenges that I experienced in my life as I have learned through these incredible people around the country to look at how solutions to these problems have come about.
Well, I know when you first started this, it was kind of the idea of toying with talking with government officials, too. Have you done any of that, or do you plan to?
Actually, we have spoken with a number of government officials, a couple of lieutenant governors, state representatives, city officials, and what we stick to is if they are nominated, we will attempt to meet them. If that meeting comes through, then we know it was meant to be. We don't seek them out on our own, although I definitely have my, wish list of people I'd love to sit down and chat with and pick their brains. And maybe at another time when I do a more personal journey, I'll pull those top government officials together and be able to ask them some questions. But when an elected official is nominated through this process, I know that they are making somewhat more of a significant personal human impact. And those are the people that I want to meet. I really believe that as community and as government, we need to be working very closely hand in hand. And sometimes I think that we forget that. I remember I was at the People's Fair in Denver, Colorado last year, and there was a young man, as we were before the election, working very hard to sign people up to vote. And I remember seeing this young guy, couldn't have been more than 23, 24, and he yells at the election worker and says, "Why should I vote? It makes no difference in this country." And that is my response. I went to the election worker and I said, when someone tells you that, you tell them, you don't vote, you're the reason we have problems in this country. Because if you don't stand up and say, this is the person I want to represent me, then you have no voice. I believe very strongly, my personal value system is I won't complain about a problem unless I'm willing to work on that solution. And for me, part of willing to work on that solution is maybe getting that person into elected office who I know is going to represent the voice of me and my community. And when an elected official is nominated through our website, I know that they're being the voice of a community, and I get to hear that in our interviews. In Minnesota, I interviewed a gentleman named Robert Lilligren, who's the vice president of the city council in Minneapolis. And this young man in the 80s was working as a bartender, and Minneapolis was doing an economic restructuring, if you will, asking people of different income levels to move into no low-income neighborhoods so that there would be economic diversity and hopefully help save these neighborhoods. Well, Robert picked a community, and as he said, the day he moved in, crack cocaine moved in as well. Well, instead of leaving, as many people of means chose to do, he and his partner stuck their feet into the ground and said, instead of leaving this community, let's save this community. Because look, we're walking distance from the bus. We're right near work. We're downtown Minneapolis. It's if you look beyond the trash and the cocaine, we are in a beautiful neighborhood. So they started picking up garbage on the street, and they found that the garbage was a vehicle for transferring the cocaine and the funds, as their life was threatened every time they would pick up a piece of garbage. But they kept going. And he told the story of watching a little girl walk to school and leave her building and have to walk through a whole group of men having a fight over a cocaine sale. And they walked through this group of men, and they got on the bus, and all he could think is, Why did these children have to start their day at school walking through this violence? And how on earth are they going to be able to concentrate on school? And he said, I grew up, and he's a Native American man. I
hate to cut you off, but we're out of time.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, you can go onto my website and you can see Robert Lilligren's video. It's all in there, Minnesota.
Right. And it's www.50in52journey.com, 50in52journey.com. And Dafna Michaelson, sorry.
That's all right, Chuck.
Thanks so much for being with us today on the front page. Certainly we wish you the best of luck in your continuing journey here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and Morehead and Kentucky was just beautiful.
Thank you very much. Again, Dafna Michaelson, our guest on the front page. I'm Chuck Mraz, host of the show. See you next time.